People want the reality that country music gives, I think.
I don't know where that Springsteen of country came from. I never did figure that out.
In a world that constantly seeks the next big thing, some voices remain forever. They've sung through wars, seen vinyl give way to streaming, and outlasted every trend that ever swept through Nashville. They are the architects of country music, building it brick by brick, and in 2025, they're still here, standing tall and singing. While the spotlight often moves on, these artists are living testaments to resilience, creativity, and the unwavering heartbeat of country music. Some tour less and some sing less, but they're still writing, still recording, and still showing up to the Opry like it's church. This isn't just a tribute to who they were, it's a reminder of who they still are. Because sometimes, history doesn't live in a museum. Sometimes it stands backstage with a guitar in hand, ready for one more song. Born in 1916, Violet Hensley isn't just the oldest living figure in American country music, she's a living time capsule. At 108, she still walks, talks, and occasionally plays the fiddle she carved herself nearly a century ago. Known as the whittling fiddler, Violet started making violins at 15. Taught by her father during a time when handcrafted instruments were all that poor families could afford. Her fame didn't come from records or radio hits, but from the living rooms, festivals, and folk events that celebrated country music's Appalachian roots. She performed at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, Silver Dollar City, and folk gatherings throughout the Ozarks. In every appearance, she didn't just perform, she educated, carving a fiddle as she spoke, and explaining how sound travels through wood like breath through lungs. She never chased fame, fame found her. Through documentaries, magazine profiles, and national news features, Violet became an icon of old-world skill and old-time music. She didn't need a chart topper, she had stories etched into every line on her hands. In 2025, Violet Hensley still lives in Arkansas, where her family cares for her and her legacy is preserved not just in museums, but in living memory. She is a reminder of what country music once was, before studios and labels, when a song was all you had and a fiddle was worth its weight in gold. At 92, Willie Nelson remains the most recognizable outlaw in country music history and one of the last still standing. Born in Abbott, Texas in 1933, Willie survived the Great Depression, wrote his first song before he was 10, and spent decades being told he didn't fit the Nashville mold. So he burned the mold down. With his weathered braids, beaten guitar, and unmistakable phrasing, Willie created his own orbit, one that pulled in legends like Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, and Chris Christopherson. In 2025, that orbit still hasn't collapsed. He's released over 70 solo studio albums, and just this year, Willie dropped yet another collection of slow, soulful, and reflective songs. His fingers may not move like they used to, but his voice is still undeniably Willie's, still unmistakable, and still full of heartbreak, humor, and wisdom. More remarkable than his catalog is his stamina. At 92, he's still headlining Farm Aid, still touring with family, and still captivating crowds with little more than a stool, a mic, and that trusty guitar trigger. To fans, each performance feels like a miracle, like watching history breathe. Willie doesn't pretend to be young. He leans into age like an old tree against the wind, strong-rooted and completely unfazed by time. He's not just surviving, he's still singing. Still Willie. At 94, Jeannie Seely is more than just a country music legend. She's a living pillar of the Grand Ole Opry. Born in 1930 in Titusville, Pennsylvania, she made her way to Nashville with a voice full of soul and a determination to break boundaries. Nicknamed Miss Country Soul, she brought emotion and fire to every note, traits that didn't always fit the industry's expectations for women at the time. She joined the Opry in 1967, and unlike most of her peers, she never left. In 2025, she's still there, taking the stage on weekends, introducing young artists, cracking jokes with the house band, and proving that country music isn't about age, it's about heart. Her biggest hit, Don't Touch Me, won a Grammy in 1966 and opened doors for women to sing with vulnerability and power. But Jeannie's influence goes beyond her music. She was the first female artist to wear a miniskirt on the Opry stage, the first to fight for equal stage time, and the first to speak up when others stayed quiet. And now at 94, she's still recording new material. In 2024, she returned to RCA Studio B to cut a brand new song, backed by a documentary crew. Her voice is weathered, yes, but full of that same undeniable magic. Janny Seely isn't just a guest at the Opry, she is the Opry. Every time she walks on stage, history stands a little taller. At 81, Brenda Lee remains a powerhouse of country and pop history, a voice that defined multiple generations and still echoes every holiday season. Born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1944, she was singing on radio shows by the time she was 6. By her teens, she was a global star. Her nickname said it all. Little Miss Dynamite. Small in stature, explosive in sound. She became one of the first artists to successfully cross over from country to pop, selling over 100 million records worldwide. Her 1960 hit, I'm Sorry, remains one of the most heart-wrenching ballads ever recorded. And Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree is more than a seasonal favorite. It's a cultural anthem that returns to the charts every December like clockwork. But Brenda Lee's influence wasn't just commercial. She broke barriers for young women in the industry, often touring in male-dominated lineups and holding her own without complaint. She showed that a woman didn't need to be flashy to be unforgettable. She just needed to sing the truth loud and clear. In 2023, Brenda stunned fans by performing live again at the Country Music Hall of Fame ceremony. The room rose to their feet, not out of obligation but reverence. In 2025, she continues to make public appearances, often speaking on panels honoring her peers and reminding the world that her legacy is still being written. Brenda Lee didn't just break the mold, she built her own. And she's still standing strong. At 79, Dolly Parton remains a force of nature, one of the most beloved and recognizable figures in all of American culture. She's not just a country music icon. She's an empire in rhinestones. Born in a one-room cabin in Sevier County, Tennessee, she went from singing on local radio to becoming the most honored female country performer of all time. In 2025, she's still moving at a pace that would exhaust artists half her age. Dolly continues to write, record, and release new music. In recent years, she launched a rock album, earned another Grammy nomination, and even hinted at a Broadway musical about her life. Her voice, though softened by age, still holds the warmth and sharpness that made Jolene, Coat of Many Colors, and 9 to 5 generational staples. Beyond music, Dolly's work in literacy through the Imagination Library has now given over 225 million books to children worldwide. Her philanthropy, business ventures, and leadership of Dollywood have made her more than an entertainer. She's a national treasure. But a shift is also happening. Dolly has begun speaking more openly about her legacy, her spiritual beliefs, and how she wants to be remembered. She's not slowing down, she's becoming more intentional. Every new song, every interview, every public moment feels like a message in a bottle, a lasting gift to the people who've loved her all along. Dolly Parton has always belonged to the world, but in these final chapters, she's reminding us that legends don't fade, they shine until the very end. At 81, Ronnie Milsap stands as one of country music's smoothest voices and most unlikely success stories. Born blind and raised in poverty, he wasn't expected to thrive, let alone become a country music icon with over 40 #1 hits. But from the moment he blended soul, pop, and country into something uniquely his, Ronnie Milsap was impossible to ignore. In the 1970s and 80s, his songs like Smoky Mountain Rain, Stranger in My House, and It Was Almost Like a Song dominated both country and adult contemporary charts. His voice was velvet, his piano playing electrifying, and his genre-blending style brought country into a new era. He didn't just push boundaries, he erased them. In recent years, Ronnie has stepped back from the road after the heartbreaking loss of his son in 2019 and increasing health challenges. His public appearances became rare, but behind closed doors he never stopped recording. In 2021, he released A Better Word for Love, a collection of songs that proved his voice, though aged, still carried emotion like few others could. Today, Ronnie Milsap lives a quieter life, surrounded by family and music. He occasionally joins tribute events or appears in documentaries honoring the greats, but never for attention, just to say thank you. For fans, his catalog remains a warm, familiar place. As one of the last voices of that lush crossover era, Ronnie Milsap remains a reminder that soul, when real, never gets old. At 90, Bobby Bare is one of the last true storytellers from country music's most rebellious era. Long before the outlaw movement had a name, he was already living it, blending country, folk, and Americana with a plain-spoken honesty that felt like a conversation on a front porch. In Ohio, Bare's early hits like Detroit City and 500 Miles Away from Home helped lay the foundation for a new kind of country, one rooted in working-class pain, quiet heartbreak, and dark humor. He never relied on polish or flash. Instead, he delivered lyrics with a quiet grit that felt lived in, real, flawed, and human. Throughout his career, he recorded songs by Shel Silverstein and Chris Christopherson, collaborated with the likes of Willie and Waylon, and refused to play by Nashville's rules. While many of his contemporaries burned out or faded away, Bobby just kept singing. In 2025, he's mostly out of the spotlight, but not gone. He still makes occasional appearances at the Grand Ole Opry, sometimes stepping onto that stage with the same calm confidence he had in the 60s. His voice has aged, but the soul behind it is untouched. Bobby Bare doesn't chase attention. He never did. He's the kind of legend who lets the songs do the talking. When he does show up, the audience leans in because they know they're listening to a man who didn't just write about life, he lived it. At 66, Alan Jackson remains one of the most respected figures in modern country music, a bridge between the genre's traditional past and its stadium-sized present. Born in Georgia in 1958, he came into the scene with a quiet demeanor, a cowboy hat, and a mission to keep real country music alive. From the very beginning, Alan stood out not because he chased trends, but because he didn't. Hits like Chattahoochee, Remember When, and Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning weren't just successful, they became milestones in the genre. His sound was simple steel guitars, honest lyrics, and Southern storytelling that didn't need embellishment. In 2021, Alan revealed that he had been living with a degenerative nerve condition called Charcot Marie tooth disease, a diagnosis that slowly affects muscle function and balance. It was a vulnerable moment for an artist known for his strength and consistency. But instead of retreating, Alan stayed in the spotlight, touring carefully, recording when he could, and attending tribute shows that celebrated his legacy. In 2024, he received the Willie Nelson Lifetime Achievement Award, and in 2025 he remains present, maybe not always on stage, but in every conversation about what real country sounds like. Alan Jackson doesn't need to shout to be heard. He never did. His voice, steady, grounded, and deeply Southern, continues to echo through every artist chasing the roots he protected. At 91, Pat Boone is a name that still echoes across genres, from pop to gospel to country. Born in 1934, Boone was one of the biggest stars of the 1950s and 60s, known for his clean-cut image, smooth voice, and massive crossover success. While many associate him with pop classics and gospel hymns, Boone also had a firm foot in the country world. In 2025, he's still recording, still appearing, and still breaking records. Though not a Nashville native, Boone always had an affinity for country music. Over the decades, he released multiple country albums, collaborated with artists like Ray Price and George Jones, and brought his signature baritone into Southern churches and small-town radio stations. In recent years, he returned to the studio with new country gospel songs, and in 2024, he charted yet again, setting the record for the longest span between adult contemporary chart appearances in Billboard history. What makes Pat Boone remarkable isn't just his longevity, it's his consistency. While trends changed and styles shifted, Boone remained devoted to uplifting music rooted in faith, family, and American tradition. He's not chasing fame, he's marking time with grace. In 2025, he still makes occasional TV appearances, speaks at churches and events, and works on projects that blend music with purpose. Pat Boone may not headline country festivals, but in the story of American music, he's a chapter that never closed. At 70, Steve Earle is still one of country music's most fearless voices, a troubadour with gravel in his throat and poetry in his bones. Born in 1955 in Virginia and raised in Texas, Steve never fit neatly into one box. He was too raw for Nashville, too rock, and too honest for radio, but he never cared. He carved his own path, and in 2025, he's still walking it. Earle burst onto the scene in the 1980s with Guitar Town, a record that blended outlaw country with heartland grit. He followed it with decades of work that tackled war, addiction, heartbreak, and justice, sometimes all in the same verse. Songs like Copperhead Road, The Galway Girl, and Goodbye aren't just tracks, they're tattoos on the soul of Americana. He's survived heroin addiction, jail time, and the loss of his son Justin Townes Earle, who followed in his father's musical footsteps before passing in 2020. Through it all, Steve never stopped writing and never stopped performing. In 2025, he's more present than ever, releasing new music, touring intimate venues, and mentoring a new generation of songwriters who see him as both outlaw and oracle. In April 2025, Steve Earle was officially inducted into the Grand Ole Opry, something once unthinkable for a man who made a career out of resisting institutions. But country music has finally come around, and Steve, he's still doing it his way, with a pen in one hand and a guitar in the other. At 57, Keith Urban may not seem like an elder statesman, but in today's country landscape, he's already a legend in motion. Born in New Zealand and raised in Australia, Keith came to Nashville in the early 90s, chasing a dream with a guitar in hand and fire in his veins. 3 decades later, he's one of the genre's most influential modern icons. From early hits like Somebody Like You and You'll Think of Me, to more recent anthems like Blue Ain't Your Color, Keith Urban's sound has always been a bridge, connecting country to pop, rock, and even soul. But underneath the gloss and Grammy awards, he's always stayed grounded in his roots, strong melodies, emotional honesty, and world-class musicianship. What sets Keith apart isn't just his voice or guitar solos, it's his consistency. While other stars fade or pivot to stay relevant, Keith adapts without losing his identity. In 2025, he continues to headline arena tours, perform in Las Vegas residencies, and collaborate with rising stars and veterans alike. Behind the scenes, he mentors younger artists, supports addiction recovery causes, and remains a steady presence on award shows and global stages. Despite all the fame, Keith has remained approachable, humble, and deeply connected to his fans. He's not slowing down. If anything, he's entering his prime as country music's elder brother, still sharp, still hungry, and still chasing the next great song. At 65, Randy Travis remains one of the most beloved voices in country music, even though that voice, as the world knew it, fell silent more than a decade ago. Born in North Carolina in 1959, Randy emerged in the mid-'80s with a sound that pulled country back to its roots, smooth, deep, and undeniably sincere. His voice felt like a prayer, especially on songs like Forever and Ever, Amen, 3 Wooden Crosses, and He Walked on Water. He wasn't just a singer, he was a revival. At a time when country was leaning pop, Randy reintroduced twang, gospel, and traditional storytelling to the top of the charts, and fans responded. He sold over 25 million records, won 7 Grammys, and helped launch a new wave of neo-traditional country artists. Then came the stroke. In 2013, Randy suffered a massive stroke that nearly took his life. He lost his ability to speak and sing. Doctors said he might never recover. But Randy, just like the characters in his songs, wasn't ready to quit. He relearned how to walk, how to smile, how to be present. While he can no longer perform full sets, he still appears at events, awards shows, and Opry tributes, offering a wave, a tear, and sometimes, with help, a note or two. In 2024, he released a previously unheard track using archived vocals and new technology. For fans, it wasn't just a song. It was a resurrection. Randy Travis may not sing like he used to, but his presence still brings silence to a room. In 2025, that presence is nothing short of a miracle. As the legends of country music age into their final chapters, a quiet question lingers in every tribute. Every Hall of Fame induction, every last encore, who will carry the torch? Country music has always depended on its elders to pass down the sound. the stories, and the soul. Now, a new generation stands ready not to replace the greats but to honor them by evolving what they built. Artists like Cody Johnson are bringing back the grit of traditional country with rodeo scars and old-school vocals. Jamie Johnson carries the weight of outlaw truth in every slow, burning verse. Ashley McBride writes songs like chapters torn from a weathered journal, full of pain, pride, and plain-spoken poetry. Chris Stapleton's voice, rough, thunderous, and gospel-soaked, feels like it was sent from another era entirely. Casey Musgraves blends modern insight with timeless warmth, and Tyler Childers sounds like a lost recording from the hills of Kentucky. Channeling ghosts with every line, they're not just stars, they're keepers of the flame. They show up to Opry tributes, reference Willie and Loretta in their lyrics, and cover the classics with reverence, not irony. They know they're standing on the shoulders of giants, and they know that one day they'll be the ones others sing about. The circle isn't just unbroken, it's alive. The next generation isn't just watching, they're listening, learning, and getting ready.